Hi, this is Ann V. Brady. I'll be discussing my book, A New Beginning, the story of my adoption, life, and service, illustrated by Eric C. Brady. I wanted to, I wanted to talk about the social workers and the adoption system in this broadcast. I talked about it a little bit in my book. I didn't go into deep detail. Certain things that I want to discuss. The Department of Social Services and the social workers are great. They provide a great service by putting children in forever homes and in foster homes and keeping them safe. But what I wanted to discuss was back in the 50s and 60s, and I hope it's changed since then, but they didn't always, excuse me, they didn't always tell the adoptive parents everything about the child or the family she came from. And what I'm about to discuss, some people may disagree with and think I'm hitting on the social workers and on the social work system, but I'm not. They do a great job. But in the past, there was a secrecy about childs that were children that were illegitimate. And case in point is my mom told me that the social worker told her that my parents died in a car accident. And in fact, my mother was in her about 34, 35 when she gave birth to me. She was a single older woman. She was an LPN. And she also had my brother who was 4 years older than me when she was like 30, 31. So, but they tend to keep that secret. They also never told my mother that I was ever in the hospital. And according to my adoption file, lived in the hospital for a year because I had failure to survive, failure to thrive, and so they didn't want to put me in the orphanage. They wanted to put me in a foster home or have me adopted. They were worried that I was going to live, and they wanted to make sure. So I lived in the hospital for a year before I was put in a foster home. They told my parents none of that before they adopted before they adopted me. My mom had no idea. I was also in the hospital because they thought I broke my leg and I hadn't. But I also got German measles while I was in the hospital. So I had to stay there. They didn't tell them about that. And they also didn't tell, before I could be adopted, I had to have a physical exam done by a doctor. And when the doctor raised concerns with the social worker that he thought I was retarded, might be retarded or slow, that they use now, or mentally deficient, that she told him that if I was like that because, well, he felt that way because I didn't react or fight him or do anything other than just sit there and let him examine me. Like, and so he was concerned, but she informed him that that was because I've been back and forth between foster homes and very little outside activity, and you know, that's just the way it was, that there was nothing wrong with me. But if she had told him that I lived in the hospital for a year, from the time of birth till I was a year old, that would have probably changed his opinion because he would have realized that I was used to being poked and probed by doctors and nurses. So, of course, I wasn't going to fight. I got used to it. And so it's things like that, and mine isn't the only case. I remember my mother-in-law, Anita Irwin, who, Anita Jones, Anita Irwin later became her married name, but Anita Jones, my mother-in-law, told me that when she lived in, living in Georgia, she was a court reporter. Excuse me. And she told me she had to deliver some transcripts to an office, and a judicial office, and the secretary there had a birth certificate. And she was looking through the telephone book, and my mother-in-law said she asked her about it, and she said, well, when a child is given up for adoption, when we finally find a family for them, or as soon as we get them, we go ahead and change their name from whatever the birth parent gave them, and we go through the phone book and assign them a name from the phone book, so that when they're adopted, and later on, if the adoptee wants to search for the birth mother, then he can't, because his he doesn't have the right birth name to go looking. And they said it was to protect the privacy of the birth mother. Now, I disagree with that because I know many birth mothers and some birth fathers who have posted that they're looking for their birth child and so forth. And, you know, so yes, there are some that don't want to be found, but if they're found, they will let someone know that they don't want to engage, or but there are quite a few birth parents that are looking for the children they gave up. And most of the time, it's usually a teenager who's unmarried and forced to give up the child. Maybe she didn't want to give up the child, or at the time she thought it was the best thing, and she was forced to anyway, because they would put them in homes for unwed mothers and then arrange adoptions, and they would basically not get to see the child after it was born, and it was just. But nowadays, there are some open adoptions where birth parents and adoptive parents meet and find out about each other. Uh, that can be good and bad, and that is a personal choice between the two sides. But if you disagree with me, you can leave a message, or you know leave your comment down below and tell me what you think. And I would be interested as long in your opinion, and we're allowed to disagree. And so let me know how you feel, one way or the other. There's good and bads about any system that we deal with. And the other thing is, the social workers never told my adoptive parents that I had a brother. And my mom said that if they had told her at that point that I had a brother, they would have requested to adopt him also. And but at that time he would have been 8, and he was still living with the foster family. It wasn't until he was 9 or 10 that he was unceremoniously just dumped in an orphanage without telling him what was happening, and which to me was despicable. But that's just my personal opinion. Uh, no one told him that the Stewart family wasn't his family. He didn't know that he was, you know, an illegitimate child. He thought he was their child, and that messed him up emotionally. But I'll be glad to hear your opinion. just as long as it's polite and respectful and, not aggressive or attacking anybody. So keep it civil. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And, oh, well, a great week. It's not even, it's just the beginning of the week. Well, I hope everybody has a great week. And peace out. And I hope you have a good day too. Bye.